The other thing I think as well about working remotely, regionally remotely, is again just that factor when you're not face-to-face all the time, is don't forget where you're at is really different than where the broadcaster or the person that you're trying to pitch to is at. They might be sitting in a meeting, they might be sitting in an office dealing with staff issues of 60 people, blah, 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 blah. Just remember that when you ring them or you contact them and you're like, you know, it's all about your pitch and you want to spend 25 minutes telling them about your fantastic idea and they're just going, I can't, you know. That's obviously business practice anyway, but also just from a position about timing for the year, just make sure you really understand if they've got 3 productions on their slate already, or, you know, in terms of selling and pitching in, you've got to understand that if the broadcasters have just been to MIP or MIPCOM or the LA screenings, or they're just about to go, they don't want to get new pitches, which is also the real advantage about going to the markets, because it's the timing in the year that they want to be pitched to, and that's really important. So I think, yeah, for me, it's just more a life decision. It's more a lifestyle thing when you've chosen to come to live in your paradise, which is, I just still get goosebumps every day that we've been able to do it. It's amazing. But it's about your drive and your passion. It's about having great ideas. It's about having a solid pitch. It's establishing relationships. Network. Keep those relationships. Engage with the right partners that can represent you on the floor if you need to. Keep current. And love your cows.
Thanks, Victoria.
Okay, I'll just be very quick. So I did actually grow up in this region on a farm with cows. But I worked in Sydney for nearly 20 years and then came back here. And I do think you need to build relationships in the city. It's really hard to start out from here if you don't have those pre-existing relationships at a sort of a bigger, more national level. My first example of experience of doing a production in the region when I moved back here was working with John Wiley. We made an international IMAX film called SolarMax. It was funded by the National Science Foundation of the United States. It was executive produced through the Museum of Science and Industry Chicago, which has a major IMAX theatre, and it was for the Smithsonian Institute and worldwide IMAX cinemas. We produced it. It was basically me and John and a production accountant working in a tin shed up the road in the industrial estate. And we hired crews and worked in 26 different international locations over a year. And I realised doing that, and yeah, working with both American and European time zones, and I realised I could have been on a spaceship, I could have been on the moon, I actually could have been anywhere. It was completely irrelevant where the production office was to that, because it was a really big international project. And I just will never forget, I was negotiating a deal with a helicopter pilot in Quakatok in Greenland, and he said, where are you? And I said, I'm in Australia near Sydney. And he goes, no, where are you really? And I said, I'm actually in Byron Bay. You've probably never heard of it. And he goes, I was there last week. And it is actually a internationally known brand, and you can actually use that to your advantage. I really encourage, obviously, and it's in Screenworks is trying to do this as well, encourage people to take advantage of that. So especially when you're in development on a project, to try and bring the development here. You don't have to go. People love the opportunity to come here. And we've just done it recently with our the case study I mentioned this morning for Grace Beside Me, but also for Every Cloud Productions' new project Deadlock. We did the writers' room here, and they've been doing all of their writers' rooms and script workshops up in this region. So for me now, the challenges and also advantages of working regionally. Firstly, it is hard to make a living in this area. You have to have those relationships outside the area. So like you, I travel a lot, I'm away a lot, I'm constantly in Sydney and Melbourne. The thing that you don't get when you're living here is those opportunities for informal networking. So it is literally, it's the conversation that you have when you happen to just have a coffee with someone that you run into after some formal meeting, that then you hear a rumour that some broadcaster's looking for something, and then you follow that up. That's what you don't get. That's here. I also invest in going to the Screen Forever conference every year. And again, often it's the informal 3 o'clock in the morning relationships, or you know, it's not just the formal content. It's being seen, people remembering that you exist, because you can do so much by email and Skype and all that sort of thing, but there's nothing as good as that face-to-face relationship and bonding, you know. So you do need to have clients and partners who are not in the region, and you do need to have face-to-face contact with them, whether that's here or where they are. And I think a lot of people, to survive in this region, need to do sort of multitasking as well, like the guest house, or have a few different sort of income streams. I also do arts consulting and creative industries consulting, and I work for clients all over the state, including Arts New South Wales and the New South Wales Government. And that also is what keeps me alive during development of projects as a producer. I can do little short-term, highly paid gigs. I consider the travel costs and going to things like spa an investment, and my cost of living is lower here than if I lived in the city, so to me that's the balance. And then the big advantage of being based in the region, obviously, is it's a beautiful, inspiring place to live, and it's also cheaper to live here. But also we have Screenworks, and I really say this, I've said this before, but in some ways we actually have an advantage here, because when we bring amazing people like we have at this event today, and the broadcasters and the funding agencies here, it's possible for us as a regional community, because we're small, to actually have one-on-one access to those amazing people. And whereas if we're at the SPA conference or at some event in Sydney, we're one of hundreds of people trying to access those people, and it's impossible to get that one-on-one face-to-face contact, so that's a real advantage. And then I just also wanted to make sure that Ken has time to, I think it's important to just, for you to also talk about what Screenworks does to help filmmakers working in the region.
Thank you. I want to talk about, I suppose, what Screenworks does do and what Lisa does an amazing job with, and Lisa and I have an amazing relationship with a lot of our members. But I suppose there's quite a number of different programs that we would actually do, and including the message is joined, but I think a lot of members are actually, a lot of you in the audience are members, but I think it's also important knowing why being a member of Screenworks is so important, apart from keeping our doors open. But it's about that growth and supporting that growth of the industry here in the region. We are very lucky in our region that we have an organisation like Screenworks that's been around for 15, 16 years and has actually been stewarded by quite a number of passionate screen workers on the board, and also quite a number of passionate staff and general managers. And I think we are seeing a period of growth at the moment where we are really starting to, I feel like we're actually starting to get some traction, especially with some of our career development programs, like the Regional Producer Elevator program, which is very relevant to this program. I'm hopeful that it will be an ongoing program, and it's an amazing program where this year we've got Darius and also Poppy, who have been down to the SPA conference and has also been down to Sydney for meetings with production companies and with SPA and with Screen Australia and Screen New South Wales, and really getting in their faces. And I do that quite a bit on behalf of Screenworks in the region as well, of actually going to Sydney, and actually I go down for 2 or 3 days, and it is constant back-to-back meetings with production companies or organisations or government bodies to actually remind people about why that we are up here, and we're such a strong community up here as well. And really, realistically, if a producer in the city was really looking to base a production in a regional area, I would say in regional Australia that our region is the only region that could do it competitively from a budget point of view, because you wouldn't actually need to bring all of your crew here, because you can crew up here, you can get most of your creatives up here. There are a couple of gaps. I know that we don't have studios up here, but we've got so many talented individuals, and as we saw in the room as well, there's so many people in the room who have chosen to move here, to live here, and who bring with them so much experience and expertise. And I think there's a whole reason to actually remain part of this community and actually promote it as well. I know, Dana, you said that you don't really promote that you're a regional-based producer, but I think Byron Bay and our region has a really strong regional industry, and I suppose from a Screenworks perspective, all of our key producers and all of the producers actually promoting that to the industry, to say that we are a strong community up here, full of professionals. I think would be a great thing for us, and it's a way that we can actually work together to actually grow. And I suppose Screenworks is only the sum of its members, because we are a membership-based organisation, and I think if we all work together and communicate a common message about our region and our industry and the opportunities and the programs that we run up here, I think we can actually grow quite quickly and strongly. It's probably a good time to start handing over to some questions. Does anyone have any questions of the panel? Yes.
I just wanted to ask, so you said there's no studios here, but what about the Gold Coast? I mean, how effective, I only know Fox Studios.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Gold Coast? Is that possible to...
Look, there's a lot of people in our region who are members of Screenworks that actually go across the border. So they choose to live in the region and they go across the border to work. And when the big productions actually come through, I know a lot of people who actually go across and actually just work on the production and then come back. I mean, the broadcast manager for the Commonwealth Games is actually from our region and actually travels across to the Gold Coast but lives here in the region. There's quite a lot of, I mean that's I suppose the other beauty of being geographically where we are in our region. We've got what we have is paradise here, but we've also just across the border there's also another burgeoning big industry happening with the Gold Coast and what Gold Coast Council does with their incentives that they offer there and everything. So there are opportunities just close by that someone in Sydney or Melbourne wouldn't actually have easy access to. They'd have to relocate to those opportunities.